Why, hello there. Today is day 620, 620 days since the Elden Ring announcement trailer first appeared at E3 2019, and 620 days of me watching it. And today I am joined by a good friend of mine, a true Fromsoftware scholar and historian who knows the studio inside and out. I am joined by Theomeny today, and I've tricked you a little bit in that I've actually am recording this after our discussion. You see, I fucked up. um, my audio. I won't get into the technical details. It's boring, but my audio did not record, despite it appearing in every vector that would make sense that I was recording. And as a result, I have to edit the conversation into a really good talk by Theomeny about From Software and their tropes and themes they like to revisit throughout their history, and um, how we could expect that in Elden Ring. It's a really good like 101 history of From Software. It's really good listen. I've edited it. It's completely cohesive. Um, she has some really excellent points, and I really hope you enjoy it. And I will pop back in after um, to watch the trailer, and I'll add in a few of the comments she had during the video through editing magic to make it seamless. But yeah, so enjoy it. It makes total sense. Unfortunately, I had an audio hiccup, so we did lose part of the conversation, but there's still plenty of really good points about From Software themes that they like to do in tropes, and a really good overview of From Software's history, and sort of gives a lot of context to why we got Dark Souls and why they've kept some of these things so consistent, and sort of what inspired the company in the first place. So take a listen. It comes in with me, pitching the question to her. So, what can we expect from software tropes in Elden Ring?
Right, right. I think there's going to be a lot. From software don't seem to stray away from their established, I want to say, meta story or like their meta tropes. Um, they have a couple that I've kind of identified. They have their dark fantasy, they have their ninja games, um, which aren't really theirs because most of the Tenchu games were done by Acquire and K2, which are now Capcom Studios. Um, but they also have their Armored Core stuff, which does share some stuff with Dark Souls. Even though like one is like a mech game and the other one is, dark fantasy with sword pointy things. Um, I think the bridge between those two franchises is Frame Gride for the Dreamcast. Imagine Solaire as a mech and you fight other Solaires as mechs. That's Frame Gride. Um, so yeah, there's a few. Um, I think we should like go back real fast and talk about like the crazy amount of things that had to happen for From Software to start making games and to make games in this vein to begin with. Um, First of all, Sony had to get spurred by Nintendo at CES one year, and then Sony, pissed off, became decided that it was part of their honor to make a game console, so they ended up doing that. Part of that was they were extremely aggressive in courting third party developers. They only had bought a single studio, which becomes SCE Liverpool, who helped design their SDKs because apparently it was a mess before they got a hold of it. So through that aggression of courting third parties, you got From Software, who were doing business software, at the time, and business software meaning automating tasks for pig farms in Hokkaido, which probably comes into play with their obsession with northern continents because Hokkaido is the northernmost main island of Japan. Um, and Esky Entertainment, which starts as a publisher of computer magazines for business people, and they rapidly expand to publishing a little game called Wizardry. Wizardry is a Canadian game from 1981 for DOS, and it is a dungeon crawling game, first person dungeon crawler. It's extremely influential to the Japanese audience in a lot of the same way Ultima and Ultima Online are extremely influential with Americans, American game creators. Wizardry has a sort of teleporting movement style that you go forward like block by block, and it just kind of teleports you forward. And you fight monsters, you find illusory walls, and you do puzzles. Extremely influential in Japan. There's like only 8 mainline games, but like the Japanese audience made 39 to this day spin-offs of Wizardry. And that's not even including Kingsfield Additional 1 and 2, which are very much in the Wizardry vein, including the movement style. Um, so all of that had to like come together because ASCII wanted to start doing like a Wizardry like, and Fromsoftware was being courted by Sony to make a game, and they had 2 games in the works, which was Armored Core, which was supposed to be first, and then Kingsfield. And something happened with Armored Core, and so Kingsfield was released with the Japanese release of the PlayStation early December of 94. So that's like all of that had to happen for From Software to just be a thing to begin. And Kingsfield, like Wizardry, is a first-person dungeon crawler. It's also the first fully polygonal game. Says so on my the Japanese OBI, which is a little slip of paper that goes over the spine. Um, it's ugly, of course, but you know it's 1994, so fully polygonal, no loads while you're on the level is like crazy. Um, at launch of the PlayStation. Now, like remember, like this wasn't a thing. Like there was some other consoles dipping their toes into 3D polygonal games and stuff, but like the CD was kind of slow, and you know you had to read the CD, and it was a big thing, and that was part of the reason why Nintendo stuck with cartridges. So what you have with Kingsfield is much more serious than Wizardry, the mainline Wizardry games are, and you have John Alfred Forrester um, enter the catacombs, which at one point was more a tomb for dragon knights, and in search of his father. And this whole epic thing starts from there. Um, John Alfred Forrester, he goes through the catacombs, finds that his father was murdered, who was the head captain of the army, who was forced in there because the king who had murdered his previous 2 wanted a quote magical artifact, and that magical artifact was actually his sword, his father's sword that he had the whole time. Um, so you've already got the main, like the Moonlight Sword is never as more important to FromSoft lore as it is in Kingsfield 1 through 3. Like never as more more important. Like it is the signature from software, even in Drosne. Like the hands of the timepiece come together and they form a Moonlight Greatsword. Like there's one, but the biggest thing is that the evil king that has thrown away his entire power because he wants a quote magical artifact, which ends up being the Moonlight Greatsword, which is restored by Gyra right before you fight the king. And Miria is a tree. And that brings us to our first really big trope that I joke about calling it arboreal apocrypha, are trees. From soft and trees is this huge thing with almost every game features them. Like Randolph III is an evil tree sucking up the magic of the world, the life force of the world, and since it is at the bottom of the catacombs, probably stagnant water too. And you've got the bed of chaos, you've got the mulberry trees in Kuan, you've got the tree that you find in Ninja Blade, which is just a copy and paste from the Kingsfield 4 room where you find the Moonlight Greatsword. You've got the tree everybody thought was important in Bloodborne, probably still is, but nobody has really figured that out. The trees in Dark Souls, and people turning into trees in Dark Souls 3. From Software has this idea of trees being ravenous and ever hungry, especially when you think of the old one in Demon Souls. The old one is a baby, sure, but it's always hungry. It's in water. Yeah, it's a tree. It's a trees do nothing but drink in the sun and drink in the water that's like right there. Like that's all they do. And like Acer Aesthetics, he had a great little piece within his Kingsfield 4 video about how flow is really important with FromSoft in that going from the flowing from the top to the bottom, which usually you do in most of these games. You go from the top, especially Kingsfield 4, you start at floor 1, which is right at the ground floor, and then you head deeper into the catacombs, down floors. And as you go down floors, your map starts to falter. Like you get a full map at like floor 1 and 2 and 3. But once you get to like floor the fourth floor, like pieces of the map are missing and you fill it out as you explore. And the fifth floor is even worse. Um, as you travel downward, as the water travels downward, it picks up all the junk that it comes into contact with. You see this in Blighttown because Dark Souls itself was supposed to be about water. You see this in it's in interviews, and you see it in Firelink Shrine, how the sediment has like settled, but there's no water there anymore because they plop down a bonfire instead. Um, you see it in Bloodborne too, because mentally, the Bloodborne map in my head is a spiral traveling downward. And when you get to the bottom, it's the Lake of Mud with Rom right there. So, like, the flow of, and it's also a thing in Kuan where um, there's like a water stream that goes through the um, the compound, and you set your save file, which is tokened by like a paper boat. You set out on the water, and that saves your game. And you find those boats at the very bottom of the map in the basement, like underground, where all the bad crap is happening. It's a really cool little thing. Even Echo Knight, which has almost as little as possible to do with Souls and Armored Core, being that they're like exactly point and click adventure games. They still have like some tree lore in there and some water lore in there. Like the first game takes place on a boat called the Orpheus. And Seath in Kingsfield is also basically the patron saint of water and the moon in Kingsfield, which is carried over into Dark Souls. Um, well, what else? Oh, the sun. The sun is not your friend in FromSoft games, and this will probably this of all the things I've been talking about is probably the biggest thing that I think will travel over into Elden Ring because obviously, well, it feels like obviously that the narrator is talking about the sun being the thing that gives life its fullest brilliance. And breaking the sun is probably the prologue of it. But the sun is not your friend in these games. In Echo Knight, the sun crest is the way to get to a specific merchant. The merchant turns out to be Satan. He doesn't have your best interest in mind. um, in Eternal Ring, which I don't think people hear me talk about a lot, but you can get that on PS4. It's a PS2 launch game from FromSoft, which I think is more a proof of concept than anything. There's a super dungeon in in Eternal Ring where you open it up at a sun door after you get like the key. It's a sun door, and it is a path of pain. Like it's the super dungeon. At the bottom of it, you get the Moonlight Greatsword, but swords are like not a thing in Eternal Rings, so like whatever. Um, and obviously, Dark Souls. Gwyn is not your friend. So those are the big ones. The biggest thing with the Verdite trilogy that I haven't really touched on yet is Seath and Gyra. Gyra is you would know as Calamite. Um, Seath and Gyra are at war with each other because they were created by Valad when Valad decided he wanted to go to the afterlife. It was time for him to go to the next realm, Sylvain, and he created the dragons to watch over his creation. But they don't play nice, and they covet one another's power, one another's godhood. So this is something that's carried over to you have these eldritch beings who are fighting amongst themselves and attempting to use humans as pawns in their war against one another, not really caring about humans so much. Seath and Gyra use people and high elves and basically kill them or like throw them away or make experiments upon them when they have run out of their usefulness. Um, and that's Kingsfield. In Dark Souls, Seath and Calamite do the same sort of proxy war. I kind of have this suspicion that Calamite was sent. Well, people were Gwyn's knights were sent to go kill Calamite because Seath wanted them to, and they do that back in Ulasil. Um, and by the way, Gyra's full name is Gyra, the Black Dragon of the Forest, and Seath is the White Dragon of Darkness. Um, so like, funniest thing too is you find the Moonlight Greatsword in Kingsfield 2 at Gyra's tail, which also comes up in Dark Souls. It's like just floating there behind Gyra, and you can't. You either have to like glitch over Gyra or like fight Gyra head on to get the MLGS. So that comes up again in Dark Souls. Um, and then like the it's more than just patches will probably be in there. It's more like this meta story of like people who are kings or thought of themselves as kings reaching too far, being too hubris. Because one of the things is King Harvine built this castle on this island he shouldn't have, because it was like Gyra's island. And he got his crap kicked in for it. And when he returned to Verdite, his right hand man Sidek stabbed him in the back and took the crown for himself. Like the ambition has always been there with FromSoft games. The poison, the colorless dark fogs have always been there. Poison swamps have also always been there, and that's kind of that goes hand in hand with the water thing because as water moves down, you get more junk. It gets more stagnant. It becomes more poison, and also Kingsfield 2, Seath poisons the water and the fog to kill the high elves on the island. By the time people get back to the island because they're kidnapped to mine things because magical crystals. Once you start drinking the water on the island, it's addictive. You can't leave the island once you start drinking the water. You just can't leave. It's a very purgatory sort of thing. And like that sort of informed one of my theories about how the Dark Souls trilogy is kind of a divine comedy of sorts, in that you've got purgatory. You're basically purgatory. So those are the I think those are the big tropes that will definitely show up. Like you've got trees and water and spider bosses and
All right, I am back, and it is time for us to watch the trailer.
we have the light and the darkness. I think that image is pretty evocative for that idea that travels also. If this guy isn't our spider boss, I'll eat some cake.
I doubt you could even imagine it.
The really interesting thing is he's also a king
That which commanded the stars,
with his crown.
giving life
And so
its fullest brilliance.
they've been playing with ideas of royalty for a long, long time.
The Elden Ring. Oh, Elden Ring. Shattered by someone or something. Don't tell me you don't see it. Look up at the sky. It burns.
I like how the crack basically create. Music forever slaps.
All right, that is day 620 of watching the trailer. Hopefully, everything you saw just made sense. I did edit in Theomeny's comments during the trailer, so hopefully I don't look like a dick. I'm not ignoring her. I'm just watching it again after the fact. But yeah, I want to give a huge thanks to Theomeny for coming on. Links in the description to where you can find her work. She does some really amazing stuff. I love her Kingsfield videos and her Kuon Let's Play. They're all extremely informative, and she knows a ton about Fromsoftware and how they work, and it's just really interesting for someone who's a big fan of the developer to get that information, because they're not going to tell us. So the more you sort of know about their internal workings, the easier I think it is to sort of look at what they're doing and see where they're coming from as artists in their medium. So once again, check out the links in the description to find Theomeny's work, and feel free to leave your comments, suggestions, topics, and I will see you tomorrow for day 621.